Welcome back to Moments of Grace. This time, our 11th episode, and I've entitled it Spirituality in Times of Crisis with Dr. Lisa Miller. Lisa, so good to see you again. For any of you who may have forgotten, Lisa is professor at the Teachers College in Columbia University and also founder of Spirituality Mind Body Institute. And what most of you might remember is Lisa visiting us last year, a little bit earlier than this time. It's been about a year and 2 weeks. Lisa was with us at Grace Church Cathedral, talking to us about her work, which is in the book Spiritual Child. And she was with us just before the last gasp that we had before lockdown. Lisa, good to have you back.
It is. It's an anniversary, and what a phenomenal time it was to be with your entire community, the parents, the children, the grandparents. It's such a vibrant, spiritual, bright-hearted community. It was just absolutely wonderful to be with you all.
And it's great to see you again. We had a great visit from you. I can remember, it's weird to even think about, Hanahan Hall. I still remember taking pictures of the number of people packed into that hall to listen to you that day. And then about a month later to think we can't get anywhere near each other to pack people into the hall at that point. So very interesting to be talking to you here on Zoom for this episode of Moments of Grace, recollecting back on that. I have to say that I went back on our YouTube channel and watched your talk to us from about a year ago. And I immediately thought that I would love to speak to you again, just because of a couple of things that I've heard my daughters say recently, and they got me thinking all over again about the science of spirituality. One of them was my daughter getting into the car after school, and she started talking to me about seeing pictures of angry men, and shouting. She could tell in the pictures and how upset she was by it. And I didn't know exactly what was going on. And then I thought, oh, wait a second. She has seen pictures of what happened at our Capitol on January the 6th. And I started thinking then, what might children be and what might be the science of spirituality in relation to that? And then the other thing was, and I don't really think about it that much, but she said to me, Daddy, if I get the vaccine, can I stop wearing my mask? To which I thought, well, no. But then I started thinking, what might be going on, maybe for all of us, but especially for children as well in this. And so I simply thought that I would love to talk to you again about the science of spirituality, but especially what might be going on spiritually for us in these kind of times of crisis.
So our children have seen probably 10 years condensed into one, if we sort of add up flux and inflection points and many of the things that as children we're taught to count on, right, but really aren't truly enduring, have shown themselves quite clearly to not be enduring. So, children count on going to school, and they count on a certain level of stability in society and these things. Now, they aren't actually stable in the ultimate sense, but I think our children have been brought into clear and acute awareness of, the deeper nature of life, right? Impermanence, if you will. And then foundationally, what is real, right? What is truly real? And what is truly real is how much we love them, right? I mean, there is a love in family that is unflappable. And what is truly real is that God holds us and God is with us. There's this sense of being buoyed up in love, no matter what else holds or doesn't hold. So children are very wise, and children are very able to adapt if we as adults can narrate what these moments are about. That we have had some gains, we've had some losses, and so too we've had some changes. And who do we want to be and what do we want to be now and evermore as we start to think about coming out of this time? I sometimes liken it to a labyrinth, that we've shed a lot of our ramped up ways. Kids were pushed pretty hard 2 or 3 years ago, hard to perform, hard, almost like teaching a little monkey to read when they're 3, pushing. And kids, I think, have finally had a break. They've had a breather, and they've had a time to be kids, even if surrounded by a lot of challenge and doubt. So shedding the old ways and what is more real now here in the middle of the labyrinth, and what do we want to be reflectively, intentionally, as we start to exit as families and as parents. So, kids are deep, right? This is, we know the child is born a knower. If we look at twin studies, we know that children are born innately spiritual. Children are born with implicit spiritual cognition. Children are born, for instance, with perception of continuity of consciousness or spirit after death, unless socialized out of it. Children are deep, and they are eminently prepared to look into this moment and be with us in a truly substantial way. And what comes of that? What comes of that is a child inoculated, if you will, for a very uncertain world over the next decades. So this is, in a sense, a living laboratory. It's a chance to prepare our children for what could be a very volatile and changing world in their lifetime.
Would it be too much to say? A question occurred to me as you were speaking there. Would it be going too far to even wonder if our children are maybe better wired to deal with what we've been dealing with than people our age are?
So Bryce, you are wise and in the right line of work. We really are at our best in childhood and in adolescence. The truth-seeking adolescent who smells what's true and smells what's false, who is, if you will, always on, listening with their head and heart both. We are better at this in the first 2 decades. And it's oftentimes the parent who has the greatest loss and suffering around instability. Now, certainly we do have a good amount of responsibility as parents. We're the ones who pay the bills and keep the roof over the head and worry about medical care and so forth. But the child is eminently equipped at the deepest level, and certainly so too the teen, to look at this as a moment of finding our deep true selves, to look at this as a deeper, more patient, more interested type of family, to look at this as a time of knowing each other in a daily way and what quiet moments and long silences can yield, and to pray as a family, pray for those around us, pray to thank God for our food, and pray to thank God for the meaning that will come of this, for holding us up in this time. Yes, they are even better than us.
Well, I'm going to adapt my second question then, and hopefully that's okay, because I was going to ask, what might we do in order to, get our children through these times of crisis? Which, please do speak to that. But I'm also wondering now, what are the conversations or the questions that actually we can enter into with our children so that they can help us get through these times of crisis?
It in every bit of science supports what you say, that children help us grow as much as we help them grow spiritually. That if you ask families to keep journals of conversations of significance, it turns out that once the child knows we're interested and that we do talk about this here in our family, they will initiate as frequently as do we questions and conversations about spiritual life. So in the spiritual child, I get into that in some depth, but I think of relevance right now and here. We can say to them, have you noticed that our family in some ways is even closer than before, as much as we've always loved each other more than anything and infinitely? Are there ways where we're even closer? Or are there things you've noticed about each other or about mom or dad that you hadn't even noticed before? Let's go around the table and say something we've learned even better and more about the family since being home this year. Or, let's talk about what we're grateful for and go around the table and talk about how, even though there's challenge and pain in the world, what's in our family has been something for which we're truly authentically appreciative. Or, when have you felt God's presence with you in this year? And parents might be moved to tears to see the depth of their child's awareness of God's presence. And the things they say may be surprising, they may be life-changing for how we know our own children. But just the simple question, where have or when have you felt God's presence?
Thank you so much for that. I mean, I think this has been a kind of, for me, kind of a great recap of what we had in so much depth last year, with you coming to speak to us now in this new context. revisiting some of the same things, but in new and different ways. And so I can't recommend more to all of our listeners to go out, if they don't have it, to get the spiritual child, or if they have it, to grab it off the shelf again and to delve back into some of those headings and chapters which may sound even more relevant for us today. So I thank you so much for that, reminding us of all of that. I want to take the opportunity here right at the end because I understand that you have a new book coming out, and I would love to hear just a little bit about that so that we can all be aware of what that's about and when it's coming out. You're on mute, sorry. There we are.
Thank you, Bryce. Thank you. So my new book, The Awakened Brain. The Awakened Brain is effectively the spiritual child for adults of all decades and for teens. It is about the inherent nature of our spiritual perception, that every single one of us is born with a spiritual capacity in our brain. And whether we are Protestant, Hindu, Jewish, Muslim, Catholic, no matter what our denomination, or spiritual but not religious, we use the exact same neural docking station of our brain. And in the Awakened Brain, I point out ways that we can help realize, if you will, strengthen the muscle that is our birthright. So I can't wait to share that with you, Bryce, and your beautiful community.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us today. I look forward to listening to this all over again, getting back into the spiritual child and now into the awakened brain as well. But we all thank you so much for being with us again.
And one last line of science.
Yes.
If there's one thing that science says squarely into our moment, if there's one thing that science speaks to us now, it's that trauma is a gateway for a deepening of spiritual life. This is axiomatic. Post-traumatic spiritual growth is how we are wired. And all we have to do is support that process in ourselves, our kids, and one another.
I don't think there could be a more positive way for us to end today. Thank you so much, Lisa.
It's a pleasure to be back with you. Take care.
Thank you.